Captain Schaff's log, stardate 10097.36. This week, a vicious enemy returns to wreak havoc on the crew of the Enterprise. And as the dust settles after that lethal encounter, Captain Vactor and I must pick our jaws off the floor after this heart-racing, gut-punching penultimate episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1. Only one episode remains in the season before we have to say bon voyage to Pike's Peak. But until then, let's boldly go forward with today's episode. Welcome back, Trekkies and Trekkers, to TREKnological, a Star Trek shakedown. I am Captain Schaff, co-captain of the USS TREKnological, and of course, with me on the bridge every single week is Captain Vactor. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, Schaff. It's the penultimate episode.
Woo! Yeah, oh my gosh, and what an episode it was. We cannot wait to talk about this one. Both Captain Vactor and I have been talking through Discord, an app that we use to talk back and forth, and we have just been gushing about this episode. So we have a lot to talk about. We welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us this week for Mission 19. We're recording this on Friday, July 1st. The episode officially went live on Thursday, June 30th. So we are excited to talk about it. Thanks for listening to us. We're going to try to bring to you as often as we can Star Trek shows and movies. We're going to be coming up on a short break, a short hiatus with TREKnological, simply because I'll be moving from the state of Colorado to the state of Washington. And because of that, all of my mics and equipment are going to be packed up, so I won't have any means to record. So after next week's episode, we'll take a slight break, but we'll come back with a vengeance, guaranteed. Now, with the nature of TREKnological, we're actually part of a podcast network, the Geek So to Speak podcast network, and the grand zaddy of them all, Geek So to Speak, is a geek news podcast. It's currently on hiatus right now, but that is where we get our name. We also have a few other podcasts we'll talk about a little later in the episode, just so you know what else is on the network. But, of course, the most important one right now, here in your ear holes, is TREKnological. Thank you so much. We hope you'll subscribe to the podcast. If you're already subscribed, thank you. And one cool thing is on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify, there's ways to rate us and review us. We really, really encourage that. There's ways on Anchor in our show notes. If you click at the bottom of our show notes, there's a link that'll give you a chance to leave us a voice memo if you want to basically leave us a voicemail. You can also support our podcast from there, which is really, really cool. And on Spotify, from time to time, I'll even ask questions, and it'll be a great way to engage with the audience. So hopefully you'll do that. At the very least, we hope that you enjoy the podcast and that you share the fact that you enjoyed this podcast with your friends and family who are also Trekkies and Trekkers, so that they can enjoy it too. We're just trying to continue to grow. So thank you so much. Now, with all of that out of the way, Captain Vactor, can you please set a course for the nearest planet? Maximum warp.
Aye, sir. Course laid in.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. All right, Captain Vactor, can you crip walk down to the transporter room where we'll beam down to the planet's surface to search for some Trek news?
Aye, sir. On my way.
It's too bad this is only an audio podcast right now, folks, because full on crip walk, better than Snoop Dogg, better than Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
All right, well then, 2 to beam down. Okay, let's scan the planet's surface for any sign of Trek news.
Oh yeah, I found some Trek news, Captain Schaff.
Yeah. What kind of stories did you find?
Well, it was a light week in Trek news, but we have some nice tidbits for you. First off, our favorite captain of all time, classic, first of its kind, the Shat, William Shatner. He's got a documentary coming out, Shaw, and it's going to be crowdfunded, fully owned by the fans, and backers are going to get a bunch of profits. So this is going to be focusing on the 7-decade career of William Shatner, from early bit parts on popular 1950s television shows to his star-making role as Captain Kirk and his Emmy wins for The Practice and Boston Legal. And finally, his later years as a Blue Origin astronaut and elder statesman of geek culture. So this looks like something that I would be interested in, Shaw.
Is it too late to fund this? I kind of want to be part of that. That's kind of cool.
I was looking for a link in the story, but it looks like it's not Kickstarter. It's not Indiegogo. So it's not those typical crowdfunding sources. This is
we just have to send a check to William Shatner.
Apparently Legion M is what I'm seeing, or that's his production company. But one of these ways you'll be able to back it. I'll
tell you what. Yeah, we're going to include all these links to the news articles that we talk about in the show notes. So please click into it, and it'll give you an opportunity to dig a little further. And maybe you'll be faster than us in figuring out how to fund this, because we definitely think it's worthwhile. I mean, the Shat.
Yes.
Right? The Shat.
Actually, I did find the link. It's kind of weird. They have it linked to the word reservation, but you can click on that, and it's join.legionm.com/William Shatner documentary. And you can reserve your spot right now, because it looks like they just went live yesterday. So you can still own a piece of a legacy, Shaw.
I think I might do it. True Trekkies and Trekkers will do it.
There is a slot here that Shaw will select to donate $10,000 to this documentary. So
that'll be the one I choose by accident, and then I'll dispute the charge on my credit card.
Nice. We also have a nice little piece from Melissa Navia. She, as we know, is Captain Ortegas on Strange New Worlds. Lieutenant. I'm sorry. Lieutenant Ortegas. And she was talking about season 2 of Strange New Worlds. She said, this particular season we're filming, season 2, has been electrified because of the fact that we're filming season 2, but we're getting to watch the world experience season 1. And so we're seeing that all that love and all of that's informing what we're doing. It's just been 2 seasons of an amazing crew, an amazing cast. Everybody in the cast is as awesome as you want them to be, and as you think they are. They're funny. They're just great people to be around. I'm an introvert, and I still would hang out with them every day if I needed to. So she's got a lot of positive things to say about season 2. So this gets me pumped, Shaw.
I don't know how you get better than this season, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
So that's cool. And then we also have a wonderful piece over at looper.com. They've got the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes fans always skip on a rewatch. So if you're a Deep Space Nine fan, you are not going to want to miss these episodes. And finally, we got the episode of The Ready Room this week, the penultimate episode of season 1 of Strange New Worlds. And I don't know what they're going to do after this for The Ready Room, because there's not going to be like a live action Star Trek show airing at the moment. So
it's true. Yeah.
We'll see next week. They'll probably tell us next week when the last episode airs. But this one, we got to see Bruce Horak on The Ready Room, and he talked all about his experience as Hemmer and also going behind the scenes of the craftsmanship that went into making the Gorn and making this horror episode. So yeah, very nice episode.
Such a great episode, and such a great Ready Room episode as well. So thank you, Huitin.
Nice. So that's all the Trek news. You can find those in our show notes.
Awesome. Thank you, Captain Vactor. We will transmit those news articles to our show notes for our listeners. Now then, let's continue our weekly mission with our episode discussion. Now, first things first, we want to make sure to throw up a red alert because we don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't had a chance to watch episode 9 of season 1 of Strange New Worlds, which is called All Those Who Wander. An excellent episode in the season. I mean, there's been no true stinkers. Like, there's been no real bad episodes. There's been a couple that are maybe mediocre, but that's because you're comparing it and stacking it against the rest of the season that has been super duper strong. So, but if you haven't had a chance to watch this episode, press pause on this podcast, go watch it on Paramount Plus, and then come on back because we're going to talk all about it and our thoughts, and you're not going to want to miss it. So that's your warning. Now, from here on out, we're going to go into spoilers. So synopsis of this episode is the USS Enterprise crew comes face to face with their demons and scary monsters too when their landing party is stranded on a barren planet with a ravenous enemy. This episode was written by Davey Perez and directed by Christopher J. Byrne. The episode premiered, as we said, on Thursday, June 30th on Paramount Plus. So, Vactor, I want to hear your thoughts. So you watched this episode before me, before I had a chance to, and I'm so thankful to Captain Vactor because he warned me. He was like, dude, do not get spoiled on this. You will not want to be spoiled. So go silent, go radio silent, go dark. Do not check social media. Do not go into the news articles. You don't want to miss, or you don't want to get this spoiled for you. So thank you officially for that.
Yeah, no problem, Shuff. I said this is a big episode. We already have the red alert up. So if you're getting spoiled by this, it's your own fault.
It's true.
This episode, Hammer had to sacrifice himself, and apparently Bruce knew that going into this season. No one else knew, but he was told ahead of time, hey, you're only going to last one season. And I was very shocked for that reason. Like, hey, they would at least give him a whole first season, right? Like, they wouldn't kill him off before the season was over. So that was very surprising to me. Now, you told me, Shoff, that you were able to predict everything that happened in this episode. So tell me, Shoff, how did you know? What was the crystal ball in the Shoffman house?
Okay, so at the 10-minute mark of this episode, and not too much had gone down by 10 minutes, but at the 10-minute mark, I wrote down either Sam Kirk or Hemmer is going to die at the hands of the Gorn. I just called it. I wrote it down in my notes. I also said, and I predicted that Uhura was going to realize her place on the Enterprise as a communications officer. I mean, we all knew that was going to happen eventually because, and that's kind of the dramatic irony present in this episode is that she's so wishy-washy about what she wants to do, what her future is going to be. But like, we all know, we've already seen her future in our past. So like, to me, that type of conflict, I know it's character driven. It doesn't weigh as much on me because we already know where she gets to. So like, that is one aspect of a show that exists within canon of it has to sort of conform to a certain sense of canon. They're not going to detour too much from Uhura. At some point, she finds her way and she becomes the communications officer of the Enterprise. That's how it goes. So like, that's that. So, but I predicted that would happen at the end of this episode. The one thing that I did not, that I incorrectly predicted was I thought that she was going to realize that she needed to be a communications officer because maybe she would save a crew member's life because of her abilities to speak or interpret language. Like maybe she could interpret something about the Gorn and then that would save a crew member's life. And I thought it might be the new lieutenant that gets basically he gets an upgrade. He gets a promotion in the beginning of this episode. Lieutenant Duke, I believe is his name. Yeah. Now, R.I.P. to Lieutenant Duke. He does not make it. So it's a very short-lived reign as lieutenant on the Enterprise. And he also wasn't wearing red, so go figure. But I thought that she was going to basically save him. So that part I did not get right, but I did call the fact that Hemmer was going to go. And man, you know, in these past couple episodes, I've really, really enjoyed Bruce Horak's performance as Hemmer, and he's really grown on me. And so I'm going to miss that guy. I'm gonna miss that that antennaed dude in engineering.
Yeah, he made an impression just from the moment, being the daredevil in space from the first time you saw him in that cooking scene, and he was like radar senses and everything was going off. That made me fall in love with him from the start. So I figured he would be around for a while, but man,
Yeah.
that really kind of hit me in the gut when they did that.
I know. I mean, we know that obviously Scotty is going to become chief engineer. Now, is that going to happen second season? Maybe that's a possibility. I mean, we got one episode left of the first season. I highly doubt they're going to fill that role immediately. So I think it'll probably be a second season debut of whoever the next chief engineer is. But I think it's a perfect opportunity to bring Scotty on board if you're going to do that.
Do you remember? Because I'm trying to think. When I watched the original series, it was a little bit scattered. It wasn't in order. Did they ever address Captain Pike in the original series at all? Like Kirk taking over for the Enterprise, or was that just in that unaired pilot?
It's a good question. I feel a little bit too fuzzy to answer that confidently. I think I just have to go back and rewatch TOS. And I really want to. Like with this podcast, I definitely have seen a lot of Star Trek. But TOS is one area where I know I've missed episodes, just like Enterprise. But that's one I deliberately fell off of because I just didn't love it towards the end.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to use this podcast from just one of my own personal goals to sort of reinvest in some of the shows that I didn't give their full due.
Yeah.
So definitely TOS, I want to go back and refresh my memory on stuff because it is fuzzy. And when your question, I don't know if I can answer, but we can ask our audience if they know the answer. If there's some Trekkies or Trekkers that know, let us know. You can always reach out to us on social media at TREKNOPOD, Instagram, Twitter. Or you could even message us with a voicemail on Anchor's system. So there's lots of ways to reach out to us. So we would really love that. Sam Kirk. I kind of thought he was going to die, and now I kind of wish he did because he's kind of a pussy, right?
Yeah, like when you said that, you thought it was either going to be him or Sam Kirk. My money would have, if I was a betting man, I would have put money on Sam Kirk dying.
Yeah.
Just because Kirk has not had a lot, of screen time, but Hammer has just been the superior character at this point in the season. And like you said, in this episode, he does not come across as somebody that we want to save, that is worth, the Kirk name. So I'm with you. I just thought in this whole episode, it was like the only reason he's here is to make Spock mad and to be a jerk.
Yeah. Speaking of Spock, there's a really funny moment at the beginning of the episode. It takes place, I don't know, maybe like 4 to 6 minutes into the episode, but Pike basically makes Spock do dishes. I just thought that was like such a funny moment. Like, you don't even think about the idea of doing dishes on the Enterprise. Like that doesn't even come up as a possible thing. Like you don't see that there's janitors, or anybody cleaning up after themselves. It's just a clean, like totally sterile ship all the time. But like somebody's got to do the dishes. So now Spock's given an apron by Pike, and he's like, "Yeah, you got it. It's your turn, man.
Yeah,
it's your turn on the chores board."
Well, also that moment where, and I was going to message you too, but I didn't. At that point, you hadn't seen the episode. But when Pike is playing the dad, do not make me turn this car around. That whole thing just made me laugh. That whole exchange.
I love that. We actually have a quick clip of that moment, so I'll play that right now.
You sure you want to split up the crew?
It'll be fine, number one. You get the supplies to K7, I'll pile the kids in the station wagon, take a road trip.
Sir, the station wagon?
Anybody has to go, now's the time. Do not make me turn this car around.
Okay, yeah, it's so funny. Man, Pike, I love Pike. Pike for Prez. Hashtag Pike for Prez. I'm going to write him in on the ballot. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Got my vote.
What if he did? What if Anson Mount somehow became president? Oh my God, that'd be amazing. So I would love that. Another quick, go ahead.
Did you know he has a podcast?
you've mentioned it. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but I mean, I would follow him into the mines of Moria. I would follow him into the shadows of Mordor. I would definitely do whatever it took. The guy's an awesome.
It's called The Well, and you already know his voice. It puts you at ease. It makes you calm. It's like a meditation podcast, but he's basically talking about all kind of art, just all kind of things, interviews with celebrities and different artists that he brings on the show. It's him and Brandon Edgens, who I don't know who that is, but they've got a good relationship, and it's a good podcast. So The Well is the Anson Mount podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds pretty cool. Spock has a really funny line as well at around the 8-minute mark because Spock accidentally calls Lieutenant Duke Ensign Duke.
Oh, yeah.
And gets razzed for it pretty much by Sam Kirk and Nurse Chapel. And Sam's like, all right, take another shot. He said, you got to buy him a drink. And Spock talks about how humans are pretty much just alcoholics and how they have a drinking game for everything. So I'll play that clip right now too.
Duke's a lieutenant now. You call him an ensign, you gotta buy him a drink. It's Starfleet tradition.
Another human drinking game. Does their number have no limit?
Nope.
Oh, gosh, the writing on this show is so good. I love it. I freaking love it.
Yes.
Now we have, obviously, we could talk, I think, ad nauseum about all of this stuff. It's such a great episode. Let's talk about the Gorn.
Yes.
Because this episode is absolutely Alien meets Star Trek. I mean, it's the way it's filmed. You even have point of views from the Gorn. And they have sort of like this like thermal, almost like Predator type, like viewpoint of theirs. Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. Love it. They're very reptilian, which we already knew they would look like that. But the only Gorn we've ever seen otherwise is a man in a rubber suit.
Right.
And he's fighting on a desert planet against Kirk. It's not impressive. and it's kind of, and that kind of stuff is kind of the reason why I am really like not a huge fan of TOS. It's not a dig at TOS. It's just the limitations that they had towards effects that it kind of takes me out of the moment.
Right.
And I feel like things are too cheesy or corny. And so, and growing up with TNG and not having TOS to be like the beginner point for me, it makes it hard to go backwards because it's like, if I have a MacBook Pro and then someone hands me a giant E-machine from like the early or the late 90s, early 2000s, like I'm gonna be like, gosh, this sucks. I've got like old Windows, like you can't really compare those types of things, so it makes it tough. But but the Gorn were awesome, and I'm stealing this from Ready Room, but they were called the Gorn Reborn. I was like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So yeah, let's talk about the Gorn.
Yeah, that was like one of the moments from the original series that when I was growing up, it's Kirk fighting like you said, the stunt man in a rubber suit that stands out in my mind, amongst other things. But like you, I found it very hard to get into the original series when I was younger for that very reason of, oh man, this looks corny. This looks old.
Yeah. Kirk
Kirk is throwing these boulders and they're like styrofoam. And my dad would laugh at that with me when I was younger. Look at how phony this looks, he would say to me. And as I got older, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, I really have come around on the original series because of the storytelling. And when I showed my wife a couple episodes, I said, just watch the story. Like, you'll get invested in the characters and what's going on. And there's so many timeless things about the storytelling. And there's, the underlying issues and things that were going on at that time a lot of them are still relevant and ring true till today. So I've been able to kind of suspend my disbelief for a lot of the cheesiness and the phoniness and just kind of focus on the storytelling. And that's been really good for me. So it's cool that the Gorn now are getting that visual upgrade and making them, probably what they were designed to be from the beginning, so fearsome opponents, instead of, all right, there's a guy over there. He's not very fearsome. He doesn't strike a lot of fear in my heart.
Well,
But
here's the interesting part as well is in the episode, I'm forgetting what the name of the episode is, where the Gorn, that Gorn basically fights Kirk on that desert planet. But there's
Arena.
no point at which the arena. Thank you. There's no point at which the Gorn says to Kirk, "Hey, I'm a Gorn." Like, it's like the only reason they think he's a Gorn is because the Metrons tell Kirk that this is a Gorn. But because of that, it creates a really nice and interesting loophole that doesn't necessarily have to represent the Gorn. It might not be truly the Gorn. The Metron said it was the Gorn, but that doesn't mean it's the Gorn, right? So it kind of opens up the option, and this is kind of why I think they did this. They sort of reimagined the look of them because it's not necessarily 100% that this is a Gorn. I mean, yes, we've all accepted it to be the case, but it does leave them a little bit of wiggle room, and I think they're very careful on this show to walk that fine line of not retconning everything, like that they are treading that line of canon and respecting it. So I really appreciated it, what they did with the Gornies. That's what I'm calling them. Baby Gorn are Gornies, and Gornies never say die. That's what I can say.
nice.
Patent pending, trademark, copyright, all rights reserved.
But yeah, they did a great job between blending puppetry and, the practical effects side and then the CG side. And Alex Kurtzman talked about it a little bit on the Ready Room. This is, the suspension of disbelief and taking what the audience can see and then editing things that, like, editing out the things you can't see or the behind the scenes stuff. That was perfect on this episode because I didn't know there was any puppets. Like, I was watching it and I was like, this is all feels real to me.
I couldn't believe that when I saw that on the Ready Room. I could not believe that those were puppets. That was so brilliant. And this show, you can tell, anytime they have an option to do practical effects, they do them. They did it with the purple alien that appears earlier in the episode that ends up basically being like the chest burst.
Yeah.
What are they called?
Yeah,
like the face
that's right.
hugger, but the
Yeah.
chest burster scene. The little girl calls her Buckley, but we don't have an official name for the purple alien. But he is really cool, and his whole face was like breathing, and he had these like horns that were kind of like moving. So all those animatronics and having that practical look, it does something to make it feel more authentic. And I was thinking about it, like it's those practical effects combined with an AR wall, where these actors just get to interact with real things like that they can see, that they can touch.
Right.
There is no replacement for that. And to me, it reminds me of what it's like in community theater. Because I used to do a ton of musicals. I used to do a ton of plays. And the goal was to, in these shows, as much as possible, to have the furniture, to have the props, to have the sets. You couldn't rely on visual effects. You didn't have CGI. Like, you had to interact and it had to be a real thing. So the fact that these actors are getting the chance to interact in a very real way with things that are science fiction, they're not real, they don't exist. It's turned Star Trek, especially these episodes, into much more of an art form, I think. Yeah. So the AR wall is changing the game for Star Trek, and I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it.
And that's what the same thing on in the other galaxy far, far away in the Mandalorian. When I first saw their version of the AR wall, I was like, this is going to change everything for movies and television going forward. Like the green screen, the blue screen coming up, that was always, actors talk about, it's very difficult to act when there's nothing there. It's like a tennis ball and you don't have anything. Everything is your imagination. But when you can actually have physical objects to interact with, I think that just makes the actors' performances that much richer. So I'm looking forward to season 2 and beyond for Star Trek. So that's very cool.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We got a brief glimpse of Spock unhinged. He was raging against the machine in this episode, and by the end of the episode, he was a little bit out of control. So I'm sure that that was interesting.
His human side, his Jeff W. side. If anyone's a listener of the Sandbox Gamers, my co-host on there, you will know that the rage flows with Jeff W. And it did with Spock here too. So that was very interesting. I liked seeing that emotion come out.
Mm-hmm. And also, it was another opportunity for him and Nurse Chapel to interact. And even though I think T'Pring is a beautiful woman, I gotta say, but Spock and Nurse Chapel, I ship it.
Oh, wow.
I starship it.
Dang. Man.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be really interesting going into season 2 with Spock and Nurse Chapel. There's that thing. Will they, won't they? I don't know. We know things aren't going to work out for him and T'Pring as far as in the TOS era, but that doesn't mean that something can't go down with Nurse Chapel in the med bay when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
When Mbenga goes back to his quarters. So, but as we mentioned, of course, coming back to Hemmer, rest in power, my good man. He had some beautiful last words, Captain Vactor, and I wanted to share them on the podcast here. I'm going to play that clip.
Hemmer, you don't have to do this.
But, Captain, my sacrifice saved the lives of those I care most about. For me, there is no other choice.
A logical conclusion.
Yeah, so I mean, he was wearing red. It was coming. I mean, red shirts always die. So, but what an impact he had on that episode! What a perfect, noble exit that he had for the show. And I think I saw in an article that there's a good chance that we haven't seen the last of him as an actor in other roles within Star Trek, maybe even Strange New Worlds, because of prosthetics and things like that. So we might still get more of him as an actor within the Star Trek universe. So that's cool.
Yeah, because like I said, I just feel bad that he didn't even get a full season.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. Yeah, I'm going to miss that guy for sure. This is another episode, and we've talked, I think, a lot about number 1, about Rebecca Romaine, but it's another episode where she's basically useless. She almost doesn't even exist in this episode, except for like the very beginning of the episode.
I was trying to think. I don't even remember her in this episode. I remember on the Ready Room, but I don't remember her on this episode.
She's there when La'an is tasting his breakfast that he made for the crew, but that's it. That's it. So, that's...
What a waste.
What a waste. It's a waste. And also, we're still getting no backstory for Lieutenant Ortegas. And I say hashtag justice for Ortegas on that one. I think it's high time we get to know more about her, but it probably won't happen until season 2.
That's
based on
thinking.
What Melissa Navia, I think that was her name, right?
Yes.
Melissa Navia.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I forgot to mention, there's a shot, and we included this as our episode artwork for this episode, but there's this beautiful shot just made possible, obviously, by the AR wall. Gorgeous ice planet in this episode. There's the derelict ship in the distance, and it's the USS Peregrine. And a couple of the crew members are in it. I think it's Mbenga and Pike, but I'm not 100% sure. But like the shot is so incredible, and the style of it. So, man, I love everything about Strange New Worlds, the way that they're filming it, all the techniques, and like I said, it's an art form at this point. It's so great.
Yeah, and the storytelling so far, having the episodic storytelling versus us coming off of Picard, it's just been refreshing. It's been kind of a breath of fresh air, and I'm very excited to continue this in season 2. So even though we're winding down, season 1 is not even over yet. I'm already anticipating season 2.
Oh yeah, me too. Totally. I'm gonna miss this show so much in its absence. Speaking of absence, La'an is taking a leave of absence from the Enterprise at the end of this episode. We find out, and Uhura, on the other hand, decides to stick around. Of course she was.
Right.
Now, totally unrelated, but Vactor and I were having a discussion about stuff, and I don't even know how this came up, but okay, now I remember. Vactor, you set the scene with your son. Your son had he stole something from your office.
Right. So I was in the living room. My son, who is 15 months old, comes walking. First of all, he waved goodbye to me. So I was like, oh, where are you going? Because we're staying here, buddy. We're not leaving anywhere. He waves goodbye to me. Then he walked into my, where I'm currently recording the episode, and pulled Schaff's birthday gift to me, my Captain Sisko figure off my shelf, and brought it into the room. So I sent Schaff a video. I was like, look what he just came in here and brought.
So my response was, I was like, okay, I like to respond a lot of times with GIFs, or GIFs, as some people call them. I call them GIFs because they're gifts that you give to somebody. But I was looking for a Cisco GIFs, and what I stumbled upon, it could be the best kept secret of the internet, I think, because Cisco GIFs are basically Cisco reviewing movies, and it's very hilarious. It's totally unrelated to Strange New Worlds, but it's very funny, and I'm going to link it in the show notes, so make sure to check that out. I found a Tumblr that had a whole bunch of them just like saved, so you could just like look at them all at the same time. But here's one of them I'm looking at right now. He says, the third Jurassic Park movie was the only good one. that's his review on Jurassic Park 3. He also said, where's this one? I had to get really drunk to watch Time Cop.
That was the one that you sent me.
Yeah. Oh shoot, there was a really, really funny one. Oh god, it was about Jerry Maguire. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah.
It was about Jerry Maguire. Oh, here we go. He says, I thought Jerry Maguire was balls, but I was wrong. So just imagine, obviously he's not saying these things out loud, but it's all textual. But it's so funny because you can just hear Cisco's voice in your head, right. Avery Brooks telling you this stuff, and it's totally out of context. It makes no sense for him to say any of this stuff, but that's what makes it so funny. So it made my day, and I hope it'll make your day when you check it out. Now, we've reached the end of the episode discussion. Any final thoughts on the episode before we move into just a weekly recap?
Well, I think, Shuff, this is my favorite episode of the season.
I agree. This one is the strongest. Memento Mori is the second strongest, in my opinion, and both of them Gorn related. So I really hope that this is not the last we've seen of the Gorn. I hope they're just like a regular nemesis for this crew of the Enterprise.
Well, if we go by what Ethan Peck, right? Spock. Yeah. If we go by what he said in the Ready Room, this is not the last of the Gorn. So we're definitely, I believe, going to see them in season 2.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, then let's move on then. So this past week, how's your week been, man? You went on a staycation.
Yes, that's right. My wife has been putting in long hours as both a wife and mother, caregiver to my son, my little Cisco. And we went on a staycation into Scottsdale. So I had a very nice time, a nice welcome break from screaming baby and other responsibilities. I took the day off, 2 days off from work. So it was a very relaxing time, Shaw.
That's great. You deserve it, man. You deserve it. Firsthand, when we started this podcast, we were designing it to be sort of short form. And some episodes have been longer, but we really try to keep within 30 to 40 minutes if we can. This one's getting close to 40 minutes, so we'll be wrapping up soon. But we started it because we love Star Trek, but we're also dads, we're also husbands, we're also hardworking. So we only have so much time. But it's important to be as present in our families' lives as we can. So that's why we try to be respectful of their time as well as our own, and as well as your time too, which is why we bring you these shorter episodes. But I think you're killing it as a dad. So nice work.
Thank you very much, Shaw. And you as well.
Thank you. My daughter, Emily, who will be 2 on Monday, the 4th of July, she learned some new words the other day. I was reading, she has a bunch of those little golden books.
Yes.
But this one specifically is a Star Trek book that I got her way back in the day. It was like, it's like the ABCs of Star Trek. So it goes through the alphabet, but it like applies a letter to something about Star Trek.
Nice.
And it got to B, and it referred to the Borg. And so I taught her the word Borg. She was saying Borg earlier. And then I went to S, and S was Spock. And she started saying Spock, Borg, Borg, Spock, Spock, Borg. So she was just shouting Spock and Borg all day. It was pretty hilarious.
Nice.
My Trekkie heart just grew 3 sizes that day. So
Nice.
so that was pretty awesome. Also, a couple of notes I totally forgot to mention about the Ready Room. Some things I learned. The director had flickering lights going on the set, even in the moments between the scenes, just to keep the tension and the energy at that level where people are like heightened and frightened. So I thought that was brilliant. Because that's everything. That sets the mood and it keeps them in that character, in that spot. So that was really cool. And then just a funny moment. Bruce Horak was talking about the moment that he got sprayed by the Gorn goo, and he was talking about off stage, like off the camera. There was a guy with a super soaker full of this Gorn goo, and he referred to it as gornographic, and I definitely laughed out loud at that. He called it gornography, and I had a really fun laugh.
Yeah, that was funny. So. I didn't laugh quite as hard as Will Wheaton did. He thought it was the funniest thing of all time, but I did laugh as well.
So I just want to say one thing. I love Will Wheaton. I love him, but there are moments where I feel like he dials it up just a little too much.
Yeah, I
know he's doing it just to be engaging as a host, and so for that I commend him. But like, it feels a little bit artificial.
Yeah.
So that part I kind of struggle with. But yeah, he either that or he just feels things in a level that I am incapable of. And if that's the case, kudos to you, Wesley Crusher, because I can't get there where you're at.
I wish I could get to those levels.
So yeah. Well, anyways, folks, that's our episode. Thank you so much for listening. Mission 19 is in the books. Of course, if you're looking to find us on social media, you can do so at TREKNOPOD on Instagram and Twitter. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we are part of the Geek So to Speak podcast network, with Geek So to Speak, our parent podcast, being on hiatus right now. But there's 2 other podcasts to enjoy besides TREKnological, and that would be The Sandbox Gamers, a video game podcast hosted by Vactor, Wonder Rob, and the always angry Jeff W., as we gave him a shout out earlier. And then also, if you're into comic books, which myself and Vactor definitely are, Vactor has spearheaded a comic book love podcast called We Love Comics. And every week he reviews what he's reading, as well as having guests on the show, Marcus Seabury and Hunter Camp. And then just this past week, you had an additional guest, and I'm blanking on his name, but you guys talked about Tim Sale.
Yes, we had a retrospective for Tim Sale, recently passed away, and my good buddy Dane Davenport joined me. We actually go way back to a previous comic book podcast, Between the Panels. So it was great having Dane on there. We hadn't podcasted in like a decade. I don't even know how long it's been, but it was great to have him on there. So definitely check that out.
It was a great discussion. I'm in the middle of it. I haven't finished the episode. I probably have another 15 minutes left, I think. But it's a great episode, and I think a proper tribute to Tim Sale and for everything he's done for Superman and Batman.
Yes.
Especially Batman.
Yes.
So please check those episodes out. If you want an access point to all of our podcasts within the network, go to geeksotospeak.com/network, and you can click on the links to go to all the shows from there. Don't forget to subscribe and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. If you're on a platform that doesn't have that feature, then we highly encourage you to check out Spotify just for the moment, just so you can answer the question of the week. And also it'll give you a chance to rate us and review us while you're there.
Yeah.
At the very least, please please be sure to share us with your friends and your family. We're just trying to make it in this podcast world, and we need your help. So with that in mind, we are going to leave you. But next week next week's going to be a sad week, because not only are we going to be saying goodbye to Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1, but we will also be saying goodbye, or at least goodbye for now, as we take a podcast break while I move all my stuff to the state of Washington. So we are definitely looking forward to the season finale and looking forward to talking about it with all of you. With that, Captain Vactor, I believe our mission of the week is complete. Schaffen Vactor here, to beam up.
Live long and prosper.